on Sunday.
Tonight's edition of Eyewitness News is proudly brought to you by the fully imported Bluebird from the new Nissan.
This is 10 Eyewitness News with Anne Fullwood.
Up for grabs, the blue ribbon seat that could be someone's ticket to the lower house. Bridging the gap, Prime Minister Keating claims he's reached agreement with Aboriginal groups over Mabo. The Olympics row, the New South Wales government called to account. And free at last, Somali warlord Aidid releases his American hostage. Good evening. In a surprise move, a senior Liberal MP has resigned from the Parliament, opening the way for a leadership challenge in the Federal Liberal Party. The unexpected retirement of Jim Carlton gives Senator Bronwyn Bishop a chance at a lower house seat and the Liberals' top job. Stephanie Kennedy has the story.
After 16 years in politics, the federal MP, Jim Carlton, announced tonight he's stepping down in January.
We didn't win the last election. I'm not a minister. I feel I should be doing more for people, and this is a way of doing it.
The former federal health minister has taken a job with the Australian Red Cross as National Secretary-General. Jim Carlton's blue ribbon seat of Mackellar covers Sydney's northern beaches, and the resignation opens the door for New South Wales Senator Bronwyn Bishop to move into the lower house.
Well, it's open to anybody. We've got a democratic system. We believe in competition, and if Bronwyn wants to stand, well, that's fine, but it'll be up to the jury to decide.
The high-profile senator has made no secret of her leadership ambitions, and the move into the lower house is Bronwyn Bishop's springboard to the Liberals' top job.
Do you see this as an opportunity to advance your leadership ambitions?
As I said, John Hewson is the leader, that's not an issue.
But John Hewson isn't threatened by the prospect of Bronwyn Bishop sitting on his back benches in the House of Representatives.
Leadership is not an issue, and as far as I'm concerned, we're a long way from that. I mean, Bronwyn needs to decide whether she's going to run and what follows after that, but leadership won't be an issue. It'll just be a way of using Bronwyn's talents in the most effective way we can.
Before Bronwyn Bishop can challenge for the leadership, the New South Wales Liberal must first win pre-selection, and that may not be an easy job. A Melbourne Cup field is expected, and under new rules, candidates will face a panel of 200 instead of 50. The by-election is due early next year. Stephanie Kennedy, 10 Eyewitness News.
Prime Minister Paul Keating is claiming tonight that he has finally answered the concerns of Aborigines over the Racial Discrimination Act and native land title. At a news conference this afternoon, Mr Keating was confident his solutions will meet with Parliament's approval.
After long and detailed discussions with Aboriginal leaders again today, Mr Keating came to a news conference to signal success.
They don't want to see any opportunities for any state to override native title, and hence their concern about the Racial Discrimination Act, a concern which we have met.
Aborigines will be able to choose between state or federal courts to determine their native title claims. Still to be explained how the native title can coexist with pastoral, mining or tourism leases, and how state land management procedures can be monitored by the Commonwealth.
If it adds to problems, if it adds to uncertainty, it simply won't work. But again, I think we just have to wait and see what the legislation says.
Cabinet should give final approval on Monday. Mr Keating says he's been talking with the states too, but he's not counting on support from WA or the federal opposition.
Well, I'm confident that the bill is everything I say it is, and that it can pass through the both houses of this Parliament.
Clearly, Mr Keating is now working with a keen eye to the concerns of the Democrat and the Green senators. Their support is also crucial if the new wine tax deal is to get through the Senate. In Adelaide, a nervous toast between the winemakers and Democrats after Senator Meg Lees announced support for the package.
We believe that it was essential for the industry that we now get some certainty back into the equation.
Still far from convinced, the Green senators. The winemakers have again urged their support despite some grape grower resistance in Western Australia. Paul Bongiorno, 10 Eyewitness News.
The New South Wales government's feeling the heat after the release of documents suggesting problems with the financing of the year 2000 Olympic Games. They show that Treasury suggested the government drop its Games bid, warning it could lead to a $1 billion loss.
The documents, released under opposition pressure, reveal there's been no financial risk analysis of the year 2000 Games. That was suspended until after the IOC decision in Monte Carlo. There's also the warning of a minimum $180 million deficit. To make up the difference, the following Treasury options: a levy of $100 per year on each household in New South Wales, a 1% surcharge on income tax with a cap of $500 per taxpayer, and a 5% surcharge on local government rates. The documents have severely damaged the Fay government's credibility on the Olympics. Premier Fay says there'll be no Olympic tax.
Well, that's reassuring, but why is Treasury saying you need these taxes and that the suggestion of a break-even Games is illusory? Why is Treasury saying that you need these taxes to pay for the Games?
The risk analysis has been resumed. Paul Mullins, 10 Eyewitness News.
Investigations are continuing into an explosion and fire at Sydney's Caltex oil refinery early this morning. More than 30 fire brigade units and bushfire crews were sent to the Kurnell refinery when a tank of spent caustic exploded. At one stage, flames leapt 50 metres into the air. Thousands of litres of foam and water were used to cool nearby tanks. A Caltex spokesperson says there was no risk to nearby residents. It's believed the explosion could have been started by an electrical spark. Former Victorian football champion Maurice Rioli is considering his political future after admitting to pawning parliamentary goods. The Northern Territory's Shadow Sports Minister says he did it to raise enough money to attend last month's AFL Grand Final in Melbourne.
Maurice Rioli today made public his Achilles heel.
I've got to be honest. I'm addicted to gambling. And people do stupid things.
It began when he played football in Perth and continued into his political career. Just before the AFL Grand Final this year, Rioli pawned a parliamentary fridge, television and microwave for $500 so he could be there to present the Norm Smith Medal.
I'm glad this is out in the open because, you know, being a gambler, you're always, running around, trying to get a bet on.
One item, the microwave oven, was brought back to the Assembly in the dead of night.
Presumably it was all a very clandestine affair. It must have been after the Assembly shut down for operations at 10 o'clock last night. And, it all smacks of a very smelly operation.
Rioli has resigned from the Shadow Ministry. Police will investigate the matter. Tracy Spicer, 10 Eyewitness News.
The man who slaughtered a mother, her 2 daughters and a family friend has been sentenced to life in prison under strict security. William Patrick Mitchell used a tomahawk to murder the family at Greenough, north of Perth, in an attack without motive. The mother, Karen McKenzie, was struck 9 times around the head and then raped. The court ordered the details of the attack on the 3 children were too distressing to be made public. In sentencing Mitchell, the judge said he will not be eligible for parole before serving 20 years in jail. A major federal government inquiry has recommended a massive shake-up of Australia's road and rail transport. The proposals include unlimited numbers of taxis, higher bus and train fares, and motorists paying each time they use new roads and bridges.
According to Canberra's Industry Commission, urban transport is in serious trouble. Clogged roads, dirty, unreliable trains and buses, and overpriced taxis.
People want a better deal, and we think that people deserve a better deal.
So the solutions are dramatic and include an immediate deregulation of the taxi industry, possibly with compensation to cab owners for devaluing their licence plates, worth up to $250,000 each.
It's totally irresponsible for governments to hold down the numbers and allow that to happen.
Open competition should save passengers an average $2 a trip. Private industry could make buses more efficient too, saving up to 40 cents a trip. But most travellers could be in for a shock.
People travelling at peak times, people going to and from work, may have to pay more, and perhaps should pay more than they do at the present time.
That's because hidden subsidies to bus and rail commuters cost each household $500 a year. Fares should rise to match the true cost of the service.
The bulk of commuters on public transport are people who are going to work. They're in employment, they're relatively well off. Why do we subsidise them?
And on the roads, the Industry Commission recommends motorists pay as you drive. That could mean more tollways or new technology, like a phone card. Each trip automatically debits the plastic. Run out of credit and the camera catches your number. This Industry Commission report has taken more than 12 months to prepare, and now the public is invited to comment. But it could be years before transport improves. That's because state governments have to make most of the radical changes, and they've tried and failed in the past. Paul Smith, 10 Eyewitness News.
When we come back, a tennis star's anger over her attacker's sentence, and Britain's ambassadors of ill will go on the rampage. The man convicted of stabbing Monica Seles has walked away from court a free man. Günter Pasch was given a 2-year suspended sentence by a German court. Seles says she's horrified that Pasch has been released. She suffered a wound in the back when Pasch stabbed her during a match in Hamburg last April. He told the court he'd done it because he was in love with Seles' rival, Steffi Graf. In South Africa, a prominent pro-apartheid politician and a Polish immigrant have been convicted of murdering the ANC activist Chris Hani last April. Prosecutors allege Clive Derby-Lewis and Janos Valus were part of an assassination plot. Derby-Lewis's Australian-born wife was found innocent. Good news for the families of 2 peacekeepers who've been held prisoner by Somali warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid. US helicopter pilot Michael Durant and a Nigerian soldier have tonight been freed. Durant was captured 11 days ago when his helicopter was shot down. The Nigerian had been a prisoner for over a month. They were set free just hours after Aidid told reporters he would release them. It was the first time in 4 months the warlord has been seen in public by the media, the subject of a manhunt. He described how the UN went after him.
I have been bombarded while I was at my house from the beginning. But after that, I was always in Mogadishu, moving. They never come close. And then they never come close to me.
The United Nations is stepping up pressure on Haiti's military rulers. The Security Council has voted to reimpose economic sanctions unless the island's elected government is restored.
The deal to return ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide may not be dead, but it is on the critical list. One of the next steps in the accord calls for General Raoul Cedras to step down as head of Haiti's army this Friday. Will he?
The general hopes so.
Meanwhile, Cedras said gunmen who took to the streets last week were patriots, outraged because United States and Canadian civil engineers aboard the USS Harlan County carried M16s as well as pistols. And their landing was to be step 7 of a 9-step process designed to return Aristide.
We have step number 7 outstanding. It only goes to step number 9, then we have the complete process in place. It's bound to get harder as you get closer.
But step 8 was Cedras' resignation, and this diplomatic 2-step seemed to be getting nowhere. With hundreds of UN forces still at sea, the commander of the tiny United Nations contingent already in Haiti was sitting tight.
We'll proceed when we're convinced that the Governor's Island process is back on track and the authorities demonstrate by their actions as well as their words that our mission will have a secure and cooperative environment to operate in.
The military may be facing opposition from some of this country's business people who just want to get on with business, but right now the military's vice-like grip on power in this country shows no sign of loosening.
Talks designed to overhaul the world's trading system remain deadlocked tonight. US and European trade negotiators met in Brussels to resolve their differences in a host of areas, including crucial to the GATT talks. But the US is standing firm on the issue of farm subsidies, and it's described French suggestions to put to one side controversial issues such as agricultural subsidies as unhelpful. For their part, the French say that last year's tentative US EC farm trade deal is unacceptable. English soccer has once again shown its ugly side, this time at a World Cup soccer qualifying match in the Netherlands. More than 600 English fans were arrested and locked up in a military barracks by Dutch police in Rotterdam and Amsterdam. Many of the fans had arrived at the stadium without tickets. No admission brought violent responses. Even before the game had kicked off, a lot of them had been deported.
The rampage in Holland confirmed the fears of many that Europe's most violent football fans had not changed their game plan. A man who infiltrated soccer gangs in England and then wrote a book about it explains.
They think of themselves as defending the idea of the Queen.
They're there representing England's honour. So the moment they're provoked, they will respond, and they'll respond very violently.
It's that response that has England's honour on the line. It has also disgusted the vast majority of British football enthusiasts who were travelling to Holland in hopes of seeing their team qualify for next year's World Cup contest in the United States.
None of them have got tickets. You know, they travel over without tickets. And, you know, cause trouble, and then they know that they're only going to be thrown out of the country. They're not going to be prosecuted, are they?
Police in Britain have brought in everything from video cameras to the cavalry to try to discourage violence. At Wembley Stadium in London, officers watch for trouble in the crowd. Partly because of the cameras, violence inside football stadiums has declined. But police say those statistics don't tell the whole story.
But that only relates to arrests in and around football grounds during the period of a football match. And what we're saying now is we've identified that there are still problems going on, but they've moved away from the football match, the football ground as a venue, and we know they're still going on.
Once again, England is humiliated, and once again, Britons are asking themselves why.
Last night on 10 Eyewitness News, we told you about the Serbian orphans facing a cold and desperate winter. Representatives from Care Australia recently visited this orphanage in Belgrade, the Serbian capital. They said 350 children under the age of 3 face malnutrition because food and medical supplies are scarce. Most of the orphans lost their parents in the three-sided conflict still raging in the former Yugoslavia. After the story aired last night, $30,000 was donated towards medical supplies and disinfectants. Still to come, a media merger in America points to the way we'll communicate in the future, and one of Australia's best-known companies pushes ahead with a new deal.
You'll need a hand. Hooray for Victor, meet the big brass band. Meet the leader of the band, the Victor 500.
The Prime Minister, Mr Keating, has announced he wants Australian business to help achieve his goal of a genuine Asian-Pacific economic community. With the focus on the inaugural Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in Seattle, Washington in November, he has appointed an APEC consultative panel which includes some of the big names of Australian business. He says the government must take advice from business in developing and improving trading relations in the Asia-Pacific region.
Our goal as a trading nation should be to create an integrated market of 2 billion people with harmonised trade rules, harmonised investment rules, harmonised standards and certification, and an agreed way of settling disputes between members.
In a major breakthrough for Australia's tourism industry, workers on Hamilton Island off the Queensland coast have agreed to abolish penalty rates. The wage deal is a first. Instead of the penalties, workers will be compensated in their weekly pay packet.
It might be an island paradise for holidaymakers, but to employees it's hard work 7 days a week. Hamilton Island used to pay staff penalty rates for working nights, weekends and public holidays, but no more. Now they're paid for a 160-hour month instead of a 40-hour week, with penalty rates built into their base wage. Union bosses approve, and the Queensland government says the deal has international significance for the industry.
It means that we're going to be able to provide a competitive service and a more professional service 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and we've got to do that these days to be able to compete with places like Hawaii in particular.
The government is hoping workers in other industries like transport decide to follow tourism's lead sooner rather than later. Industry leaders agree the days of penalty rates are almost over.
Any industry which interfaces directly with the public and operates 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, has to look at this and say, well, look, can we learn lessons from this? Can we use this type of agreement? Can we improve our profitability?
They say better service will mean more tourists and more jobs. Melissa Toomey, 10 Eyewitness News.
A second ballot appears to have paid off for Australia's second phone company, Optus. Finance editor Helen McCombie reports shares in one of its owners, May Nicholas, have risen significantly.
The phone ballot process is working for Optus. After picking up around 15% first time around, Optus called for a second vote. That's now about to close, and the newcomer to the phone market looks set to pick up another 3 or 4% of long-distance business. As a result, the price of May Nicholas, one of the Optus shareholders, was pushed up. At the same time, TNT is having an extraordinary run, boosted by briefings News Corporation has been giving to analysts over the last few days. News Corp has revealed that Ansat's making good profits and picking up seats from Qantas. Reports that the federal government might break Australia Post monopoly have also helped TNT and Main Nicholas. Meanwhile, retailer Country Road has posted a $29 million loss after write-offs from the closure of manufacturing operations and a number of stores. 7 will shut in the United States and 6 in Australia as part of a plan to return to profitability.
Easy to start and easy to use too. You just relax behind your Victor while that lively engine does the work.
And another Australian icon is being sold to the public. Sunbeam Victor, which has 3 businesses, lawn mowers, electrical appliances and sheep shearing products, is being floated. The public sale will cut its borrowings and interest bill, which blew out during the recession.
We are projecting our interest will be $2.5 million, which is a long, long way from the dark days of 19 million in 1991.
The share market was buoyant, the All Ords up 23 points. News Corporation forged ahead on speculation it might form alliances with major telecommunications groups after the Bell deal in the US. Main Nicholas and TNT were strong and Country Road fell 3 cents. That's the latest in business news.
And on the currency markets tonight, the Australian dollar's at 66.45 US cents, 43.46 pence and 70.6 yen. Gold in London, $366 an ounce. The FT100's down about 10 points. The Hang Seng closed the day up 119 and the Nikkei rose 44. They call it the information superhighway, the path to the communications technology of the future. Today, that path got a lot shorter when 2 leading US companies decided to merge in a deal worth $50 billion.
It is the biggest corporate merger in American history, creating the nation's 6th largest company with $90 billion in assets.
We will immediately create one of the world's largest information distribution companies with 22 million current telephone and cable customers.
Together, the Bell Atlantic Telephone Company and TCI Telecommunications Company will be able to reach more than 40% of all American homes via fibre optic cable. The creation of the so-called information superhighway will combine TV, telephone, computer and video technologies and make them all interactive.
Stargazer Help Desk, I'm Maya. How may I help you?
Users could instantly order from a menu, start and stop a movie, go shopping or to the bank, consult with their doctor and receive video messages.
You have 2 new messages.
This is Amy Doherty calling from Jimmy's school.
This joining of industries is happening in Australia as well, with the recent investment by Telecom Australia in the 7 television network. While the advent of the information superhighway in Australia is unlikely for many years, these companies and others are creating strategic alliances in order to position themselves for the future. By some estimates, it could take 20 years to install the technology in Australia and cost up to $23 billion. Andrew Warren, 10 Eyewitness News.
After the break, Sharon Stone makes her catwalk debut and Tim Webster tries on all today's sports news for size.
Coming up in sports tonight, the controversy as athletics officials ban independent sponsorship logos, just as our scientists forge to the front of the world's race for Olympic gold. And big Tom Moody ready to re-enter the test scene.
Oh, great shot. Cool shot.
Rain and showers were the order of the day across the country today. In the capitals, Perth had rain, but elsewhere it was fine. Temperatures range from 17 degrees in Perth to 33 degrees in Darwin. The satellite picture shows cloud in the west and the eastern part of the country. On the synoptic chart, you can see the high in the Tasman Sea, which will influence the weather in the eastern parts of the country. Tomorrow, Darwin can expect an overnight shower. Sydney will have a little rain. Canberra will be unsettled. The other capitals will be fine. Saturday's not looking good, though. Perth is going to have a few showers. Thunderstorms are forecast for Brisbane, Sydney and Adelaide. The other capitals should be fine. And looking further ahead to Sunday, Adelaide and Melbourne are expecting a shower or two. Canberra will be unsettled. The remainder of the capitals will be fine. And just before we go, the movie star Sharon Stone took a walk down the aisle today, all in the name of fashion, though. She stole the show as the surprise celebrity model at the unveiling of French designer Valentino's spring collection in Paris. On the catwalk, she wore a mini wedding dress. Outside, she was flanked by 8 bodyguards who had to keep admirers at bay. It's rather a far cry from her cold-blooded killer role in the film Basic Instinct. Ain't that the truth? That's the 10 Eyewitness News for now. Stay on 10 for Sports Tonight with Tim Webster, and I'll be back tomorrow night. I'm Anne Ford. Hope to see you then. Good night.
Tonight's edition of Eyewitness News was proudly brought to you by the fully imported Bluebird. From the new Nissan,